That's right. The book of Exodus, chapter 1 and verse number 1. Exodus 1 and 1. What a powerful book. I'm going to do this because I try to do this often because it has a very good impact. And I cannot believe it. There's got to be at least one in here. No, not a single one. Oh, there it is. Had to be a black marker. When you study the book of Exodus, this is what it means to exit. Yeah. It means to exit. What was the cartoon character? I always said, exit stage left. Snagglepuss, come on. Exit stage left. Snagglepuss, you know? Okay, that's way too far back there. Okay, you know, we have the MeTV has channel 43.9. Oh yeah, nothing but cartoons all day, all the old ones, the good stuff. Exodus chapter 1 and verse 1, it means exit. What we're going to start to talk about is about the children of Israel, what God began in Genesis chapter 12. And these shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. You know, he said, I'm going to multiply you. We know that God said he was going to multiply them. Now we know down as they went into Egypt, there were 70 souls. They're going to come out with anywhere, historians say, from 1.6 to 2.4 million people are going to come forth from these 70 souls going down there. But this is the beginning of a people here. This past week, I don't know if you know this, the Passion of the Christ was on, but the Ten Commandments was on again. Somebody had it free with ads, you know, on the, what do they call it, YouTube? Yeah. Wow, man, it is still to today, 1956, Cecil B. DeMille. What a powerful story. I mean, and it still gives you goosebumps when it seems like with the way he made it, he walks in and he's like, he's a joke. He just never steps out of character. You shall see hail. And it's just, they're paying like no attention. He knows what's going to happen. Wow. I love that movie. Well, this is the story of it. For those of you who've never watched the Ten Commandments, maybe you're young, you've never seen that. I would encourage you. It's one of the movies that are the best made movies of all time. Very good. Now, these are the names of the children of Israel which came out of Egypt. Each man with his household came with Jacob, right? Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, all those who were descendants of Jacob. And then it tells us 70 persons. All the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls, for Joseph was in Egypt already. Now, it just simply, we went over this in the book of Genesis. It speaks about how many people are going down, and we talk about the children of Israel. Again, very important to try to remember who the children of Israel are. I would encourage you. It's one of those you memorize because you're going to need it throughout the rest of the book. There are certain things that are going to go through the rest of the book. The children of Israel are going to go through the rest of the remainder of the book. All right, now, 6, and Joseph died, and all his brethren, and all that generation. And the children of Israel were fruitful, and increased abundantly, and multiplied, and waxed exceeding mighty, and the land was filled with them. Oh, by the way, one caveat tonight. I apologize, but I was getting ready, and I was late. I was just early, so I went outside and set my Bible and everything out and under the carport, and then of course when she came out, I walked right out and didn't have it. So I don't have my Bible with me tonight, so I can't make my reference and see things. So yeah, it happens. It just happens, you know. It's right there. I put it on the little grill. I got everything else but that. Okay, that's just me.
But you have something.
I got a telephone.
Oh, you're using your phone.
All right, listen. I learned to use. I have my sermons on my phone. I have everything. And that's what I learned to use that. That's why I can do it. No, I got one. I'm good. Now yours is good because it's the right one. I apologize. Thank you, brother. Forgot about that. Yeah, this is what they call liquid gold. Yeah, it's the right one. When I bought his Bible, I bought his exactly like mine. So the same references, the same pages, it's all the same. So if it's not marked like mine, it'll always be on the top. It'll be right here or there. So yeah, we have the same Bible. All right. So now Joseph died and all the brothers, all the generation. We know they're going to be down there for 400 years. And the first time that's mentioned in the Bible is in what chapter in Genesis? 400 years is going to be down there. What chapter?
Moses told them that.
No, Moses ain't born yet.
This is,
Nope. First one. Close?
16.
15. Remember, 15 and 17 are those the covenants are made. But in 15, let's go there again. Now, the reason I bring this up is because it's one you're going to have to reference over and over again. You're going to reference it many times. Chapter 15.
there it is.
13, right?
Uh-huh.
Is it 13?
What verse? Yeah,
Yeah.
verse 13 at the end.
And afflict them 400 years. That's that first mention of it that is telling Abraham that it's going to happen. And I say that because it's one to always go back and remember, hey, this was prophecy. Because listen, when you get to the life of Christ, as we just did this past week, studying his life, it's always about the prophecies concerning him. And prophecies that he gives are important. So it's a long time they're down there. And it says in verse 7 of chapter 1 of Exodus, and the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and waxed. Now there arose a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. Joseph was famous, right? And this is like the Venezuelan guy that said, I don't believe in the Holocaust. It never existed, right? After so long a period of time, people do forget that it happened, don't they? Or they'll deny it. Or it doesn't have the impact, does it? Well, I heard a new one on time. What was that guy that said that about time? You know, time heals all wounds. You know, they say time heals all wounds. Time also makes you forget, you know? I remember years ago, she died. And that was a mama's boy. And he was at graveside every day. After a while, he would go once a week on Sundays. 10 years later, there was a flower on Mother's Day and Easter. And that was about it. Time makes you forget things. You can have a hurt in your life that is so horrendous. 20 years later, you speak of it, it don't have the impact. If you lose a loved one, in my years of study human nature, watching people, it takes a year to you never get over it, you get through it. But it takes a year. You got to go through every season, holiday, birthday, anniversary, all the things that remind you of that person. The second time you go through it, it's different. Time does some things. It loses impact. And you don't think about it. Plus, you know, the generation dies out that knows somebody, hey, he didn't do nothing for me. And that's what happens. There arose somebody, and it's been years afterwards, maybe it's 2 generations, maybe 3, that knew not Joseph. It means what Joseph did doesn't have the impact. What happened? Hey, man, 100 years ago, there was this terrible famine, and this guy saved, and that's why we have all the wealth in Egypt. No, we've always had wealth. My granddaddy talked about the wealth. My great-granddaddy had the wealth. But that's how they got it. No, it wasn't. Well, they've forgotten history. They probably had a woke culture back then, you know, that erased all the history, you know. Yeah, we get rid of all the monuments, erase everything, and you forget about it, right?
Well, it's also the fact that he was an Israelite there, just like that anyway. Them sheep herders ain't never been that good.
Yeah, well, they never liked him anyway, but you forget about.
They're not even allowed to live with them.
Right. The Bible says, it says, knew not Joseph. If you underline in your Bible, that's what you want to, that's the key phrase. He knew not Joseph. In other words, I don't remember him. He didn't impact my life. I don't have nothing there. I think it was with the old guy we used to, Tatiana, who said, he who forgets history is bound to repeat it. Yeah, you know, you forgetting what's going on here. So what happens? First thing it says in verse 7, they're increasing and they're multiplying. Now you got a man that Joseph had no impact. And he said unto his people, behold, the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. In other words, they're really flourishing. I'm going to give you a quiz. This is one of those aside questions. how did God make this people to multiply and keep them from intermarrying with the Egyptians? Brother Matt mentioned it.
They were in Goshen.
They were in Goshen and they hated them. Sheep herders. Remember? Who told his brothers to say that? Joseph was down there and he said, hey, they hate sheep herders. When you get down there and they ask you, we're sheep herders. Oh, y'all sheep herders? Yeah. Remember when Joseph was there that even he couldn't sit and eat with them?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how God forged a nation. But they're by themselves and they're multiplying, right? They are multiplying. Anybody see the new thing about, I saw this, something today, there was some article about having more kids in America. Did you see that? Yeah. Yeah, have more kids. Yeah, in China they're trying to cut back, and yeah. Well, you know what happens, don't you? America hates kids. Since 1973, we've been what? Aborting kids. Then you come up with all the homosexuals and all. They don't want kids. Can't have kids. The more homosexuals you get, the more people you can't have kids. You know? You'd be amazed how many people now do not want children. You know, they're couples. I mean, I don't mean just single women or men. They just couples that don't want kids.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, that's called ungodliness. You know, the Bible says that's what you're supposed to be doing. You know, I always told my little girl, I said, look, I'm raising some man, a good wife and some children, a good mother. That's what I want in your life. I mean, you need to get married and have kids. That's what God's designed. That's people now. They're fruitful. They're multiplying, right? I think God said that, hey, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, Noah. Yeah. Well, they did. Now Egypt says, hey, there's more people of the Israelites than are for us. Now, this is what it said here. He said unto his people, who? Pharaoh. Verse 10, come on, let us, listen, this comes from the mind, was that commercial, the mind of Minolta? From the mind of one man. It only takes one thought that you can take from a man and instill it in other people. And he says, come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply. And it comes to pass that when they fall without any war, they join also with under our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. You want to get up out of the land?
No. Can I read it from the NIV?
So, yeah, you can read it from the NIV.
Come, we must deal shrewdly with them, or they will become even more numerous. And if war breaks out, we'll join our enemies, fight against us, and leave the country.
Right.
Yeah, they didn't want them to leave.
Right.
They're
That's
slaves.
a crazy idea, right? I don't like them, but I don't want them to leave.
Yeah,
That's
that's
how
right.
messed up you can
That's
get.
their slaves.
If you
Well, they're not slaves just yet, but they're, but
I don't like
Oh,
them.
they have.
you can get it. Here's the point. If we get attacked, they're getting attacked too. We all fight together, but it could be they could join the other side, and yeah, all of the above, everything.
Well, they were already working for the Egyptians then, weren't they?
Well, listen what it says here. They set taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens,
For slavery.
right?
Yeah.
So they made them slaves then,
Yeah.
right? The point is, because we just did this the other night with Jeroboam the son of Nebat. Remember what happened? He says something in his heart. It's where all bad things start. Somebody comes up with a thought, an idea, and it develops from that. Jeroboam said in his heart, now the people are going to go back down to Jerusalem and they're going to leave me and go back to Rehoboam. If they go to Jerusalem, that's what's going to happen. And they're going to come and kill me. I got to stop them from going. And all of it in his heart. And he caused the people to sin. He set up Dan, Bethel, and all that. This man has a thought. This could happen. Hey, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply. Do this. Therefore, they. So in verse number 9, it says, number 9, this Pharaoh says, he said unto his people, come on, let us. And then verse number 11, it says, they did. He comes up with the idea. He enlists them, and finally they're the ones who enact what he said to do. It's always that way. One person. You might remember Sheba? Remember Sheba? When Jerusalem was evacuated by David and his son Absalom took over. When Absalom was killed in battle, he gets back home and first thing he does is saying, okay, I'm back here. This guy just comes up out of the blue. I preached a sermon on it. Remember it? He was an absolute nobody named Sheba. And he said, guys, we ain't got nothing to do with them. Israel, to your tents. And they all left. And David said, we got to get rid of this guy. And he called Amasa, whom he made the captain of the guard, and he didn't come with him, and got Abishai to do it, and they went and killed it. But he was just a regular guy. But one man stirred up the people. There's countless things here. And I wanted to bring that up and try to tell you that it can happen. And you get people like this, they'll drive you crazy. That guy, I can see where he's at. Here it is. In 2 Samuel chapter 20 and verse number 1, this is after he gets back home. When he's back on the throne, a son of Belial, whose name was Sheba, the son of Berechi, and Benjamin, he blew the trumpet and said, we have no part in David, neither have we an inheritance of the son of Jesse. Every man to his tents, O Israel. So every man of Israel went from David after David and followed Sheba. And of course, he ends up getting Amasa in verse number 4. He tells him to assemble, and Amasa takes too long in those 3 days. Verse 6 says, Abishai, you go after him. Abishai goes, and Joab joins the crowd. And if you don't remember that sermon, it's the one where I told you Joab got to the city, and a wise woman comes out and said, hey, what are you looking for? We're looking for Sheba. Give us a minute. His head comes over the wall. One man named Sheba put that in his heart and led the people astray. When Pharaoh said it, it happens. The point is, people are gullible. If you don't think that, watch people now. People will follow things regardless of the truth. Don't care what the truth is. And now they afflict. Therefore, they did set them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. One of the commentators I was reading was talking about how the pyramids were already built by this time. But these are other cities that they built. They built cities, Pithom, Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. What was the original problem? Look what it says. They're more and mightier than we. In other words, if we make it hard, put pressure on them, they won't have as many children. That's actually the opposite, right? It made it worse. I mean, they're just having children. However, it says, but the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. This is why you always say, take the church, put it under pressure. You know what will happen? It'll grow. Put the church under pressure. It's going to grow. Make it difficult on them. It's going to get better. Put pressure on people. You thrive. How is that, Brother Glenn? Is there any scripture to back that up? Yes. In my weakness, he is made strong. In your weakness, he's made strong. Always has been. I mean, you afflict God's people, I mean, it'll flourish. That's what happens here. The more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied. And they were grieved because of the children of Israel. It just made them more mad. In other words, we came up with this idea, and it didn't work. So they begin with the problem. The problem is numeric. It is the number of Israel. There's so many of them. Israel is so great. So what do? We are going to make them slaves. And we're going to place lots and lots of burdens upon them, right? Burdens on them. However, the opposite happened. The more they afflicted them, they grew in number. They grew in number. It didn't work. So that's the first thing they tried. We're going to make it hard on them. And they make slaves of them. And then they're realizing something. This is free labor. You know how we had so many plantations and so many wealthy people in the South during slavery? Free labor. Yeah, I mean, you can't make that much being a farmer. when you got free labor, absolutely you can make money, right? Why was the South so poor afterward? Because without the slaves, they couldn't do it. That's what they're using them for, right? Free labor. That's what they realized. Hey, they built cities. Well, they built a great monument. They built no, look at it says. They built treasure cities. Pithom, Ramses. They're making cities. That's a lot of work, a lot of labor. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied. They were grieved, and the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, in mortar and in brick, and all manner of service in the field. All their service, wherein they made them serve, was with rigor. So what did they do? Oh, we got to do more. Now, they made them serve in the Bible. Does it say rigor in your Bible, the NIV?
Which one? Brick and mortar?
In other words, it was terrible.
They work with ruthlessly.
Yes, right? In other words, they were cruel to them. And it's not just their slaves and they got to work and do this. Now you take the whips to them and you make any kind of service they do. No matter what service they were doing, they made them do it with hardship and bondage. You know, I had to walk to school uphill, both ways, in the snow. You know, all the things we talk about how bad it was. You know, how bad really was it? Worse. However, when the king of Egypt spake unto the midwives, of which the name was one Shiphrah, and the name of the other was Puah. Now this is the third and another thing they're going to do. And he said, when you do the office of the midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the stools having babies, if it be a son, then you shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, save them. The daughter, then she shall live.
Mm-hmm.
So now what are they doing? We got to eliminate them. Going even further. It's even further. So they're going to kill the men, right? They're going to kill all the boys, right? They're trying to eliminate them. Trying to eliminate the people. Getting rid of them. Kill them. And he tells the midwives, by the way, you know there were more than two midwives amongst all these people. These are probably the leaders or the ones in charge, you know, the organizers or the head of the union, if we would say. You know, of all those, in other words, we're going to the hospital. Who's over the hospital? All right, we need the two top guys. Who does all the deliveries? You're over all the, okay, you do so-and-so. You shall kill them. But the midwives feared God. Now, again, this is the first time you see this. It's been a long time. We don't read about this. You read about them going down into Egypt. And we talked about the bondage and all those things. That's the first thing you read about. The first time they feared God. Hadn't heard that yet. Now that there's not just 70, but there's so many more. The first time you read about it, the midwives feared God.
These were Egyptian midwives.
Mm-mm.
They're Hebrew.
Yeah.
These are the Hebrews. From what I read, these are the
In
Hebrews.
verse
They're
15,
Hebrew
it says,
midwives.
verse
But
15, it says
are they
they're
Egyptian people that are delivering these Hebrew women's babies, or are they Hebrew women that are delivering?
Hebrew women.
Right.
Well, that was my understanding. Now, if you read it different, tell me.
In verse 15, it says they were Hebrew midwives.
Right.
And Shiphrah
Right.
and Puah.
But they were told what to do, and they wouldn't do it. They feared God. Yeah, because Egyptians didn't have much to do with them. They're trying to eliminate them. Exterminate them. Holocaust, remember? Same kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. And the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said unto them, Why have you done this thing and have saved the men children alive? And the midwives said unto Pharaoh, Because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are lively and are delivered ere the midwives come unto them. They don't need us. They're more lively. They're stronger. They can have children. Don't even need the midwife. You know. You know the old saying, yeah, man. They can deliver their own baby, cut their own cord, and go on back to work. You know, don't even need that's that good. The point is, these two women were fearing God. They didn't do it because of their fear for God. But I don't want to understate this. These two women put their lives in danger.
But they feared God more.
Yeah. You know, it's the old, what was that first movie they came out with? I can't remember it. I want to watch part of the movie. It's kind of gory. There was a thing with, it's called Alien. And then there was one with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Was Predator versus Alien. Remember? You ever seen that movie? And in the movie, there's a young woman, and she finally realizes, both these people are going to kill us. I got to make that decision. So she decides, I'm going to go with the Predator and get on his side, you know? Which one you got to take sides. It's like you're going to say, who am I going to serve? God? Well, Brother Glenn, now, God ain't like that. What kind of way is that to think? I'm going to choose who's the bigger one that's going to beat me up, God or Satan? I think Jesus said it like this. Fear not him that can destroy the body, but him that can destroy body and soul in hell. Is that not what he said? Absolutely. Hey, I fear God. Why? He can destroy my soul in hell. You might kill me, but he can put me in hell too. I mean, that's exactly how God is. You don't think about God like that. Yet Jesus actually said that. We fear God. He said, well, no, they're godly people. No, listen to what it says. You fear God. I'm more afraid of him than I am of you. Can that really make you serve God? Absolutely. It's what makes people stay in line every day. Son, tell me about how you got your goat to stay inside the fence. When you're trying to put it up, what did your goat do? When you were trying to put it up, what did it do to your wire? But when you finally got that hot wire around it, what happened? Ain't been out since. Why? Yeah. You burn him a few times, you set back. Yeah, I'm more afraid of that than, yeah, absolutely. This is the way it is. They fear God. We don't think of it like that. We're done some God-fearing people, and we've heard it all our lives and never think about, no, it's talking about fear. But that's not good. God don't want you to fear. Yes, it does say that. The psalmist said, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom and knowledge. Yeah. Every time my daddy would grab his belt, you know why? He had my undivided attention. There was a fear there, and I could listen. He had my attention. I could listen well. I wasn't daydreaming. Kids today, they can't pay attention in school. I did. Why? She had her paddles up there on her desk. Absolutely. No, she had to use it too. She could use it. Yeah, that's right. Fear does that. They feared God, and it made them do this. We have forgotten that. We've forgotten that's what makes people stay in line. But they were God-fearing, and they did that for that reason. And they said, look, hey, well, they're lying, aren't they? Yeah. Was a sin to lie? Boy, people love to throw that up, don't they? Why are you calling it a sin? Do you serve God? No. Why do you know what sin is then? Where do you get that line from? I challenge people like that. I just challenge it. We're using a godly term. You don't believe in God, so why are you using a godly term? What's sin? Tell me what the definition of sin is. Therefore, God dealt well with the midwives. Look at that. God dealt well with the midwives. Why? They feared him. He did well with them. And the people multiplied and waxed very mighty. What happens now? What they feared the most. They grew in number. Now, they grew in number. They got more and more. The more you fight, the worse it got. It's the way it is fighting against God. You know, as Gamaliel said, hey, you're fighting against God, you know. You can't do this, guys. And that's what they're doing. Well, and it came to pass because the midwives what? Feared God? Hey, well, you know, they fear God all the time. That's a terrible thing. Look what God does for you. Your God, what he did for them? That he made them houses. Don't think God's, well, I get to heaven, I'm going to get my reward. God's good to you now. He's good to us every day. He rewarded them. But they were afraid of him. Yes, there's nothing wrong with being afraid of God. Because listen, especially now, as Paul the Apostle said, we've not come to Mount Sinai, which is all ablaze. We've come to Mount Zion. We can come into the portals of glory. The flesh, the veil have been torn. We can come to God. Go ahead,
When I
brother.
read that, I got the idea. I said, it's amazing that God has done such a good work for Satan just don't know how to deal with people. Pharaoh looks at him and says, hey, kill all the boys. And they come back and say, well, you can't kill them because they're already alive when we get there. So Pharaoh just said, well, okay, I'm going to kill you. I don't need you. I'll just go find somebody. You see what I'm saying? I don't need a midwife. I need somebody to kill kids. I'm just going to get a man to stand over his spear and just stab him with it.
To escalate, the thing is, you don't know how far to push, right? And I think it's in most people. It's not, let me put it like this. It's hard. Man doesn't think like this. I learned this from the Bible, how to go to the extreme. God taught me this. You can just go to the extreme. Here, I'll give you the example. Because they're not going to that extreme yet, right? You said, why would they just do that? Let me what I learned from God. What happened? I took a piece of penny candy. Next thing you know, God, okay, we're going to kill him. He cuts your throat and you're dead. No, that's how God deals with sin. He goes to that extreme. You eat this tree, you die. We don't think like that. You know what? We'll go in increments to try to say, well, we'll try, but that'll work. Okay, we'll go a little harder than that. God says, just go out to the extreme and work it back, and you can find it easy then. You keep pushing, you just don't get there. Nobody thinks like that. Nobody thinks that to go to the nth and say, to do just all this. They wouldn't go in and it's just not man's nature. But that's exactly how God tells us he deals with things. He goes all the way to the nth and just says, okay, I'll start there. He fixes it. If we thought like that, we could fix the problem very easily. There's so many things you could fix. We need to do this. Just go do it. You know? That's really how you solve problems. Can you see it's incremental? Exactly what you said. That's what they're going to do next. Right? And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, every son that is born, you shall cast in the river, and every daughter you shall save alive. Now he says, everybody, from now on, any young boy, they're going to die. That's what he's doing. He's escalating. He's just taking him that long to get there, right? Now he tells even his people. What does it say in NIV? Does it say that?
Which one?
All the Israelites, kill them. Kill all the Israelites, right? Everybody, right? Every child, every young boy, throw them in the Nile. So that's the extreme. He could have started there, but he didn't think he needed to do that much. But that's just kind of the way we all think. But that's the way he's going at it. So now we have the final, slave burden, he made it worse, kill all the boys. Now he says, everybody, if you find a male child, just throw him in the river. Well, here's what's going to happen. And there went out a man of the house of Levi and took a wife, a daughter of Levi. And the woman conceived and bare a son. When she saw him, he was a goodly child. She hid him 3 months. Now, it almost seems like that he's the oldest one, right?
Yeah, of his brothers and sisters.
Who was the oldest?
Moses. Aaron. What was it, Aaron? It was Aaron. What was it, Moses?
Miriam was his sister.
Miriam was his sister.
She was
Yeah,
sick, though.
Did Miriam watch him in the...
Yeah, she watched him in the river.
So she had children before she had Moses, right?
Moses is the baby.
Yeah.
Right?
Not the old-
So just to make sure you know that, hey, Miriam is older, so, okay, right? Sometimes it's chronologically, just so we think, I'm bringing up things to think about so when you remember this. So Moses was of what tribe?
Levi.
Levi. They were number 3, right?
Yeah.
Number 3. And the Levite, we know who they are. Moses is a Levite. All priests are Levites. All Levites are not priests. And the woman conceived and bare a son. She saw he was a goodly child. What does that mean? Healthy, pretty, beautiful.
No health problems.
Well, anyway, she hid him 3 months. By the way, you know she's risking her own life. When she could not longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes and daubed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein, and she laid it in the flags by the river's bank. Watching this the other night, I love to watch the movie. It's never. Oh, it's wonderful to see those things. And his sister stood afar off to wit what would be done to him. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river, and her maidens walked along by the river's side. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it. And when she opened it, she saw the child. Behold, the babe wept, and she had compassion on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." The child cried, and that's the woman here. She has compassion on the child, and she knows it's a Hebrew child. The children of Israel are in bondage. It's a terrible time in their lives. She knows exactly why this child is put there. The mama doesn't know what's going to happen. And it's kind of why would you take your child and put him in a basket for somebody to find him? Because it doesn't say. Put the child there, it laid it in the flag by the river's bank. It doesn't say it, and it says here, the maidens walked along the river's bank, and they saw among what? The flags. It didn't say it floated down the river. It just says it was wherever they put it, that's where it was found, right?
Put it in the reeds.
Right. And it was found in the reeds.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bible says, had compassion. This is a godly verse here because they would not have compassion, especially this woman, the daughter of, was it daughter of Pharaoh?
Yeah.
What does it say? That's a daughter of,
Pharaoh's daughter, number 5.
yes, verse 5. The daughter of Pharaoh would not have compassion. There's been a decree out. They've been trying. Everybody knows what they've been doing. They've been trying to kill them, but yet she has compassion. I believe that this is what God does. And God gave so-and-so favor in the sight of, yeah. Why would you have favor in the sight of this person? Why would God give you favor in the sight of so-and-so? How many times in the scriptures you read about that? You know, but God gave them favor. Why do you like him? Well, you know, no, God did that and makes you have favor. And I believe God did that for them. She said, this is one of the Hebrews. Then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and call to thee a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for thee? Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women? Obviously, you know, they don't have formula back then. You need a woman to nurse the baby. By the way, and the Hebrew women, probably their milk never gave out, right? By the time they finish having one baby, they're having another one. They're barefoot and pregnant. We said years ago, barefoot and pregnant. Now, y'all may not believe that there, but I remember my mother counted up, I think it was 21 pregnancies that her mother had. 21 pregnancies, 3 miscarriages, 3 that died, 4 that died early on, 2 years old. She remembered some of them that died early. But wow, that's a lot of pregnancies. But there's plenty of women to come and nurse. So obviously they know they're having many children. Can I get somebody to come and nurse this child for you? And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go. And the maid went and called the child's mother. Then his sister said to Pharaoh, shall I go and call? Go. And the maid called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this child away and what? Nurse it for me. I will give thee thy wages. I'll pay you to be mama to your child. I'll tell you, that's the irony of God. How can God fix this? You're worried about your child dying. You know, the Bible said she hid him for 3 months. And it says here, could not longer hide him. After a broken heart, what you give up comes back to you with interest. Mm-hmm. Can I say that again? What you give up, it comes back to you with interest. I'm giving my child up not knowing they're going to live or die. Oh, my child, but what? Yeah, not only lie, but yeah. I can nurse my own child. Yeah, and you gonna pay me?
So I wonder how that child made it for 3 months.
She probably stuck around and fed it.
No. For the 3 months, she's got the child for 3 months.
She hid him for 3 months.
Right.
She had it.
Oh,
but
okay.
She hid him for 3 months. And then she puts him in the basket. Now the child comes and she's going to raise this child and nurse the child. You got to be with the child all day long to nurse the child, right? Baby in for 3 months old. You know good and well, you know that baby's got to be eat all day long, so it's going to be staying with mom all the time. It's really the irony here is to see how God blesses someone. Came right back to him and look at thy wages. And the woman took the child and nursed it, and the child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter and became her son. In other words, stay with him until they were weaned, right? 1 Samuel chapter 1, right? Hannah had Samuel until he was weaned. Of course, he was a little bit older and then she brought him the coat every year, but give him to the Lord. And she gives her child up to Pharaoh's daughter to become his son. Take this child away and nurse it. Verse 10, the child grew. She brought him into Pharaoh's daughter and became her son. And she called his name Moses. And she said, because I drew him out of the water. Now, again, this is the old Ravi Zacharias storyline. I love to tell it because it's so true. The 5 women so far that have brought this child, and there's not a man mentioned, except the one took his wife. Mama hid him for 3 months. His sister washed him, right? Mm-hmm. Pharaoh's daughter drew him from the Nile. But there were 2 women that weren't killing him. All those women, it's just talking about women making sure that the deliverer comes. This is all about the deliverer. Moses is the deliverer. Moses is the type of Christ, the one that God is going to send and to bring forth this child. There's 5 women mentioned so far. Shiphrah, Puah, Amram, Yoshabel, Miriam, and Pharaoh's daughter. There's only women mentioned so far. One of those it's when you read about women in the Bible, you just read of some. Because my favorite is Abigail. I mean, there just can't be nobody with the speech of Abigail. It just blows your mind to read her storyline. It's wonderful. All right. And it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown that he went out unto his brethren and looked on their burdens, and he spied an Egyptian smiting a Hebrew, one of his brethren. Now, of course, if you watch the movie, this takes a long time. They put a lot of things in there, and they took things from was it Cecil? No, or Philo, Josephus, etc. And they filled in the blanks, they said. But essentially, Moses knows who he is. He knows he's a Hebrew, yet he's in the palace. By the way, I'll give you this different. The difference, the 2 great men we just read about. We just read about what great man at the end of the whole last part of the book of Genesis about what great man? Joseph. Now we're going to read about Moses. Joseph, raised in the wilderness, serving a palace. Moses, raised in a palace to serve in the wilderness. It's the opposites. It's so you have to think. Doesn't matter where you come from, right? Some people are like that. Remember, if you go to 1 Samuel chapter 14, you read one of the greatest men of the Bible that I think is just phenomenal because of who his daddy was, Jonathan. And Jonathan has one of the greatest battles ever. You know, hey, we can't stay here no longer. You coming with me? They come up, they tell us to stand up, fight, we'll fight. They tell us not, we won't. They tell us to come where they're at, we're going to kill them. And he just wipes. He starts a battle by himself and just wipes out everyone. He's almost like Samson. He's almost invincible. Yet he come from an evil, evil father. And yet, where a man comes from doesn't matter. What the Bible said, he saw an Egyptian smiting a Hebrew, one of his brethren. He looked this way and that way. And when he saw there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. And when he went out the second day, behold, 2 men of Hebrews strove together. And he said to the one that did the wrong, wherefore smitest thou thy fellow? So essentially, Moses is now spending some time with his brother. All right? With his brethren. Day Number one, there is an Egyptian. And he smites the Hebrew. Right? Then day number two, we have the Hebrew, and he smites the Hebrew. And so what Moses does, day number one, he kills the Egyptian. Right? Day number two, he said, why do you hit your brother? Well, you gonna kill me like you did the guy yesterday? Are you gonna eliminate me too? That's your pattern. Wherefore smitest thy fellow? And he said, who made thee a prince and a judge over us? Well, you know he's a prince over them, right? Intendest thou to kill me as thou killedst the Egyptian? Moses feared, saying, surely this thing is known. In other words, I thought it was hidden, but it wasn't. The Hebrew just looked at me, you're going to kill me like you killed the guy yesterday, that Egyptian? Oh my goodness, somebody knows about this. I'm in trouble. Is Moses a murderer?
Mm-hmm.
Why did he kill a man?
He moved.
Did he kill somebody else?
Yeah.
Had this Egyptian killed that Hebrew?
No,
He smote him, didn't he?
Yeah.
But he killed him.
He did.
So to kill a man, it takes a little something, no? It takes some gumption, especially when you are in with the Egyptians. You've been raised in them. You've been there all your life, and all of a sudden you see this. He's got an affinity for the Hebrews. It tells you about how much he feels he is a Hebrew. And that's his people. Let's go back and look at it one more time. He spied an Egyptian smiting a Hebrew, one of his brethren. He identifies as a Hebrew. And so he killed him and hid him. When he said this thing is known, verse 15, now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses. He killed an Egyptian. Pharaoh now wants him dead. Pharaoh heard this. He sought to slay Moses. He's going to kill Moses. Now, you can realize there's a lot more into this. But Moses killing a man is a pretty big thing. By the way, here's a man that God's going to use. He's a murderer. He's a murderer. Yes, that's God's man. Well, he'll never be anything good. Yes, he will. He'll be good. He's God's man. But he is a murderer. Well, Pharaoh's going to kill him. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian and sat down by a well. He fled. Of course, we know that if you look at the movie, it's a different why he left. But essentially, he's running from Pharaoh. You call this person a fugitive from the law. Now, Pharaoh's absolutely right. He killed a man. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. You killed a man, we're going to kill you. Pharaoh sought to kill him. Now, the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them away. But Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. Moses come to the 7 girls' defense. Obviously, Moses is not a man that's light-handed. He's a warring kind of a fellow. Mm-hmm. If you notice what it says here, Moses stood up and helped them. Mm-hmm. Wow. He's strong. He killed a man, right? Moses is not just an ordinary fellow. By the way, the reason I point this out, because in the book of Deuteronomy, what does it speak about him at the end of his life?
His strength was not abated, nor his natural force abated.
I was not dim, neither was his natural force abated. When he was that old, his eye was not dim and his natural force was not abated. He was a strong man. When they came to Reuel, their father, right? How is it that you are come so soon today? They said, an Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds. and also drew water enough for us, and watered the flock. And he said unto his daughters, why, and where is he? Why is it that ye have left the man? Call him, that he may eat bread. Why are you not? Well, bring him to here. Bring him in with us. And they called him an Egyptian. He's a Hebrew, but obviously he looks like the Egyptians. He's been with them so long, he's assimilated with them, right? Remember, Joseph could speak Egyptian, right? So obviously Moses has been there so long that he looks Egyptian. And they call him that. He delivered us out of the hand. Bring him to us. And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses Zipporah, his daughter. She bare him a son and called his name Gershom. For he said, I have been a stranger in a strange land. It came to pass in the process of time that the king of Egypt died, and the children of Israel sighed by reason of the bondage. And they cried, and they came up unto God by reason of the bondage. And God heard their groaning. God remembered his covenant with Abram and Isaac and with Jacob. God looked upon the children of Israel, and God had respect unto them. Now, to set this in the proper perspective, God had respect unto them. Let me tell you why God had respect unto them. Because they're not good people. There you go. Why does it say? God remembered Abram, Isaac, and Jacob. Well, God forgot about it. It doesn't mean that God forgot about them, but in the right time, he acts based upon a covenant that he made with them. God is good to the children of Israel. He said, well, they sighed by reason of their groaning. Yeah, he's got compassion on them, but why is God having compassion? It's a covenant that he made. Brothers and sisters, listen. God hears our cries. God has compassion. But his action in our lives is based upon a man named Jesus. God, remember what Jesus did. And because of that covenant that was made, because of what Jesus did, he acts upon it. That covenant that he made, God remembered the covenant. Abram, Isaac, he remembered what his covenant. Remember chapter 15, what he said? There's a covenant that was cut. I know we're running out of time. I don't want to read it to you, but 15 and 17 are that powerful. In Genesis 15, when we read that, it says, take me a heifer, 3 years old, a she-goat, and he does them. And the Bible says here, he cut them in pieces, right? And a horror of darkness. God cut a covenant in chapter 15. And verse number 18 of that same chapter, after he talks about this, in the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt, the great river, and the river Euphrates. He makes a covenant with Abram. And he makes the same with Isaac and with Jacob. And that's the reason that God acts to help the children of Israel. He's got compassion on them. But it's that covenant, that's something else that God that drives him. He made a covenant. And God, listen, we may not be faithful to our covenants, but God remains faithful. All right, we'll pick up in chapter 2 next week. Next week. Chapter 3, week from now. Well, next week's revival. So week after next, we'll pick up here. All right, very good. Thank you. God bless y'all. Have a good night. Thank you, sisters. Have a good evening. We'll see y'all back tomorrow night, okay?